Hello everyone, many thanks for joining us to take a look at the new gamification capabilities in Microsoft Dynamics 365. I'm Warren Butler, the Marketing Director at Preact, and I'm joined by my colleague Daniel Hunter, who will lead the presentation today. Just a bit of housekeeping before we kick off. We've set all the lines to mute to remove any background noise, but you can use the chat panel to ask any questions as we go, and we'll pick up on those at the end of the session. We are recording the presentation, and either later on this afternoon or tomorrow you'll receive a recording of that. It'll also be put on our YouTube channel. A quick agenda for the session. I'll begin by introducing gamification for Dynamics 365, and then I'll hand over to Daniel, who will provide the live demonstration and will be on hand to answer your questions at the end. As a quick introduction, Preact are a CRM partner leading with Microsoft Dynamics 365. We've been trading since 1993 and we focus purely on the CRM market. We hold Microsoft's highest accreditations for CRM and cloud solutions. We provide help across all Dynamics 365 and CRM requirements. That includes training, consultancy and user support, as well as our managed service. And that combines all of these aspects so organizations can delegate tasks to our team, and that will improve and extend their Dynamics system. So on to gamification. This was released as part of the Dynamics 365 launch in 2016, and these functions resulted from a Microsoft acquisition that was previously known as Fantasy Sales Team. That change of name to simply gamification is significant because it reflects that this doesn't have to be just something that is exclusively used by sales teams. In short, Dynamics 365 gamification uses principles from fantasy sports to create a game-like experience within Microsoft Dynamics with the objective of increasing user engagement. By using elements of fantasy football and other sports and bringing gaming capabilities to Dynamics 365, it's designed to create greater competition and make the user experience more fun by turning some performance metrics into a game. This will highlight top performers, and it keeps all of the key performance indicators that matter highly visible. Gamification competitions award points on the basis of actions which are tracked in Dynamics 365, and ultimately gamification is about increasing both user engagement and data quality. Data entry can be time-consuming, but having accurate, consistent data is vital for any CRM system. So if you can apply gaming principles and make the whole process just a bit more fun, it might help motivate users who would otherwise be inconsistent about entering data. Before getting started with a gamification competition, the first step is to determine what key performance indicator will be used, or to put it another way, what type of user activity tracked in Dynamics 365 do you want to measure? Sales teams are an obvious focus for gamification competitions, and KPIs could include the value of sales opportunities closed, the number of new leads created, or how many sales meetings are scheduled. But as I mentioned earlier, gamification can be applied to many other teams as well. In a customer service department, a game could award points on the basis of the number of cases closed or how quickly cases are closed to celebrate the top performers. Marketing teams could base games on the number of campaign activities that are created. Field service or project service teams could take part in a gamification competition that ranks individuals on the basis of the total number of billable hours. And just about any user could participate in a competition that awards points for completed phone calls or published Dynamics 365 knowledge base articles. Gamification is another tactic that can help secure user adoption in Microsoft Dynamics. By tapping into fantasy sports, healthy competition can be created within teams. If people are incentivized around the data they enter and there is an inviting gaming format, it will increase both the amounts and the quality of data entered. This can also create more of a team mentality because an individual's scores will rely on colleagues who are named in their fantasy team. As well as earning bragging rights and badges within the game, users can be further motivated with prizes and awards that are up for grabs. That might be something tangible like a gift voucher, or maybe it's something more of an intangible privilege, and here you can be really creative to choose awards that will resonate with people. Some examples of this could include things like reserved car parking for a month, maybe an experience day, or free use of sporting facilities for a limited time. So that's just a quick introduction and background to the solution. I'm now going to pass across to Daniel for the live demonstration.
Okay, sorry about that. Good afternoon, everybody. I had a bit of trouble there with my microphone. Welcome to the live demonstration portion of today's webinar. So we're going to be running through a fairly swift overview of gamification for Dynamics 365. Just share my screen with you here. There we go. So first thing we're going to be looking at this afternoon will be basically installing the gamification solution. So you can achieve this in a number of ways. If you are already Dynamics 365 customers, then in your administration center, as we can see here, you will have the gamification solution available to install from your solution management. So we'll just go to here and you just click install to go there, and that would then bring up your terms of service and you'd run through that to install. If you don't already have this here, you can also pick up the solution from the app source. So again, we've just gone into app source from Dynamics 365, search for gamification, and we can get the gamification app again through there while accepting the terms and conditions. I'm not going to do that because I already have it. So it's fairly simple to get it installed. It's a couple of clicks to install the solution, and once it's installed, it will be a solution in your Dynamics 365 system, which you will then be able to go into and configure. So first step, once you've got the solution in, you'll need to generate the security key, which will link it to your gamification portal. Again, I'm not going to go through this process now because I've already done it internally, but it's just a one click up here that will generate a key. You paste the key in the bottom here and activate it, and then everything else runs through from there. So let's just move away from there. So once it's installed, you'll now have the gamification area within Dynamics 365 itself. You see it's got a number of icon entities here. Gamification settings, the top one just shows you that the solution is running and synchronizing up. As we can see here, that's all running there. First thing you'll need to do is send your users to the gamification portal. So pick up all your Dynamics 365 users and send them to the portal to become gamification players or whichever role they want to. We'll come on to roles a little bit later on. But the main items in the CRM side of gamification are the games, which indicate what games are currently running, the players, as you would expect, these are the people who can take part or play with the games, and the KPIs, the most important part, which will be what actions are being tracked within the Dynamics 365 system, which will enable users to create scores and effectively compete with each other. So these are the ones that come as part of the general setup. So we've got appointments that have been completed, phone calls that have been made, service cases that have been resolved, emails sent, leads created. So a good selection that takes advantage of most of the standard entities within Dynamics 365. So not only can your sales team take part, like opportunities created, leads created, but also service teams can get involved with cases resolved, and other users who aren't necessarily sales and service, just phone calls done, tasks completed. And these will, if we just pop into tasks completed here, you'll see how these are done. So there we go. This is the task completed one. It's running off tasks, and it's the owner of the task scores points, and we'll come on to the scoring system later on, but scores points based on a completed task. So fairly simple. If you wanted to add your own KPIs to this, not any of these particular entities, that's possible as well. So if we go over to here and select a new KPI, you can actually pick from any of the entities within CRM. So obviously I can scroll down here and look at all our different entities. Maybe if I wanted to do one based on project tasks, I could select project task there, and I could say, well, whoever it was that actually completed that project task, then they would score points for completing project tasks, etc., etc. So you can create some quite sophisticated scoring mechanisms, but this is the basic, the KPI setup is the basic thing you need to get your head around in CRM side. Everything else is dealt with in the gamification portal itself. So we'll just move on to that one there now. Okay, oh, we just did that one, sorry. Right, so first thing we're going to be looking at is roles. So I'm going to head over to the portal now. So roles in gamification, there are a number of different roles. The most important role is the commissioner. So that's the person that installs and runs gamification in Dynamics 365. One thing to bear in mind is that the commissioner cannot take part in games. So in this case, I am the commissioner here, and if I scroll down to myself, you'll see that I'm marked as a commissioner, and that cannot be changed. So if you want to be taking part in games, then you might need to come up with a different way around of doing that, creating a dummy user, for example, somebody who's going to be administrator perhaps is going to install the solution, and then everybody else can take part in that. But we can see here in our user list all the other users in our system. Most of them are marked as users, but I can go in there, I could go to Will, for example, I could change his role to be a commissioner as well, or a game manager, which gives you certain roles over the system, or just a simple user. So most of our users are set as users, so that means they can take part in the games and they can have their own fantasy team as well. Again, we're going to come on to that a little bit later on. But they get all the play functionality within the system. Okay, so I have a game set up in our solution at the moment. It's been running since early March, and it's scheduled to end on the 30th of June. So I can see my games, I can go to my stats, so I can see who's been scoring what week by week. So I can see, as we can see here, the game's been running now for 7 weeks. So if I want to, like, say, for example, I want to look at what happened in week 5, I'll get all the results from week 5. I can see here, Warren sent quite a lot of emails in week 5. He did a couple of phone calls, whereas Matthew here did resolve some cases, did some emails, and did some phone calls. So each player is scoring points based on the activity they're doing within the CRM system itself. Now, these are the actual things that these people did. So as we see here, Sean here actually closed this amount of revenue. But if we head over to the points area, you'll see that these change. So you associate with your KPIs certain activities score more heavily or lighter than other activities. So for in this case, for example, revenue 1, you will score 1 point for every £100 of closed revenue. Whereas opportunities created, with David here, he created 1 opportunity and he scored 5 points for that. So these things are all defined within the KPI system of the gamifications. Okay, going to head back to the main screen here for a minute, and we're going to run through how to create an actual game. Okay, so I go to game setup here. This provides me with the first screen here, so we're going to call this one example game. And straight away we've got quite a lot of options to set through. So the game model. 4 game models. Fantasy teams, which is the most sophisticated and feature-rich version of a gamification, whereby we can have individual players each in scoring individual points, but also they're eligible to create their own fantasy team of other users within the system, and that's a separate competition that runs. So there's 2 types of competition running at that time. We've got fixed teams, so in this case there's no fantasy element, but there are, maybe we're having a sales versus customer service, and whoever scores the most points at the end of the period is the winner. And we've got no teams. So if you've got a smaller number of users, maybe you've got 5 sales users who you want to pit against each other, then there'll be no teams, and there'll be each of those 5 people are competing directly with each other. So you've got lots of options depending on the sort of organization you are and the sort of numbers of players you want to be taking part. But for this example, we're going to go with fantasy teams. Next one down is your sport theme. So obviously it's got American football at the top there because it's done in alphabetical order, but there are quite a few other team analogues that you can pick from. In this case, I think we're going to be choosing cricket. Okay, draft frequency. So the draft is where your fantasy players get to change their teams effectively. So it works like a fantasy football thing, and every week, in this case, every week you could then change the people. So if somebody was underperforming and you wanted to ditch them for somebody else, then you could change your draft on a weekly basis. Again, you can have that set to weekly, monthly, or you get one chance to do that, and then that's it. Changing the first period roster, it's an option to have here, so you're allowed to change your team for 1 day after the start date, for 2 days after the start date, or you're just not allowed. So what you pick first is the one you've got to stick with, and then we've got the start and end date for this particular game. Okay, so we've got our basics set up here. Going to move across to the next part, which is the KPIs. So when we were back in CRM, we had these KPIs set up. So I'll go back to the KPIs here. So you see these are all the KPIs in our CRM solution at the moment, and these will transfer through to gamification. So this is where we assign how many points are scored for each of those particular activities. So I can say, okay, in this particular game, I want to associate 2 points for every 1 call made. And I also want to say you can also have 1 point for every 3 emails sent. So you can go mess around with these and make them so that you've got a balanced scoring metric, so that everybody's got an equal chance. If they work to their full potential, they've got an equal chance of becoming top of the leaderboard. The floor and the cap are fairly self-explanatory. So if I put a 10 unit floor on this particular thing, so you don't score any points for calls made until you've done 10, and then you get 2 points for every call made. And the cap works the other way around, so you'll keep scoring up until you've done 50 calls in the week, and then you won't then continue to score points. So you can't just spam phone calls in order to get yourself up the thing. If you've done 50 calls in the week on 2 days in, that's all the score you're going to be able to make for that particular KPI. We've done that there, so we'll move across to the next area, which is the players. So we selected cricket as our analog for this particular sport game, and we've got now the various cricket positions, and this is the fantasy sales team part of it. So if I click onto the bowler there, I can now select people who our users can choose from when they're picking their fantasy teams. So I'm just going to run through this quite quickly, put some players in there. Yep. And you, and you, and you. Okay. So once we've got, some of those have only got 1 player, but you understand how it would go. So if I could have maybe 4 individual users for each of these particular players, and then we'd have a selection that people could pick from when they're picking their fantasy team. But we've got enough in there for now to move the system forward. Okay, so the next item is fans. So if you've got users of gamification or Dynamics 365, but who do not wish to take part in the actual gamification element of it, like actually scoring their own points, they can still take part in the fantasy element of it. So they can become a fan. So for example, I could set these 2 guys to be fans. They'd be able to pick their own fantasy teams, but they would not be scored. They wouldn't be players, they'd be fans. Okay. Moving on, the last element here is your awards. So Warren spoke a little bit at the start about potential examples of awards you might like to offer, whether it be financial or experiential or any other type of award. These then get published out when the game starts for those people who are taking part to know effectively what they're playing for. So you can have the Fantasy Team Award, which is the person that wins the fantasy team, or the Game MVP Award is the person that scores the most points. And then for each of your KPIs, you'll then each have, and you could have an individual award for those. So who's done the most calls, who's sent the most emails, etc., etc. And once you've done that, start game at the bottom there will kick the whole thing off. I'm not going to do that because I've already got a game running at the moment, but we're going to have a look at our existing game that's in progress. So we can see here our pre-act game. And if I go to active games, there we go. We can see the state of things in progress as they are at the moment. It's been running for 7 weeks. And we can see we've got our fantasy team here. So at the top of the fantasy team tree at the moment is my colleague Nikki. followed by James and Leanne. And these users have each picked their rosters for the fantasy team. And we can see here these are all being scored week after week. And each of these players could change their teams week on week. So if they weren't happy with how they're performing, they could swap people out. We've got the game MVP award. So this is actual scoring. So in this case, commercial director David is the top gold place at the moment, closely followed by David Clode. So it's all the Davids in the top three. There's obviously a conspiracy there, but that's just the way it's worked out so far. As the game's not scheduled to end until the end of June, so all these other people have got plenty of time to catch up, apart, as I pointed out at the start, from me. Because I'm the commissioner, I cannot take part in this game. So everybody else can take part apart from me. It's a bit sad, but it's just the way it works. Okay, and then you've got individual position awards. So our fantasy game is a football game. So if I want to say who's doing the best of the people who are eligible to be, I don't know, right fullback, there we go. We've got 3 right fullbacks available, and of those, the person to be picking at the moment is obviously Matthew Edwards. So it works best with a large number of people in an organisation that you can pick from, because then you've got lots of choices. As long as you've got 2 or 3 per position, then it should give you enough of a chance to make the comparison between the 2 people and be able to switch them in and swap them out. But the fantasy team and the actual scoring are 2 separate elements of this. Okay, so just going to move over to a user's perspective. So we switched over here to the gamification portal for users, not the administrator. So you can see here the different things have changed here now. So because I'm a user, the amount of areas that I'm allowed to look into are obviously smaller, but having a look at the experience of team management. So if I go over to manage my team, hang on a minute. Is it going to let me log back in again? I hope so. Yeah, lovely. So go to manage my team, and we can see for this particular user, this is their pick of the team. Now, for example, if I wanted to swap out, I'm going to swap out in this position. No, I can't do that. If I want to swap out, Warren, I'm sorry, Warren, you're going to have to go. I'm going to switch Warren for Sean. So, and I'm also going to switch David Clode for Ian, and I'm also going to switch Coda for Kyle. So I've made my changes for this week. I then submit my team. That gets submitted. I'll get an email notification that this is now my team moving forward, and I can do that a controlled number of times in any period. So it's your normal basic fantasy team, fantasy sport team rules. You're not allowed to constantly change stuff around, but that's defined by your administrator. Okay. Other items at the top here. So we've got the leaderboards board that we looked at to start with. So this tells you not only who's winning the particular competition at the moment, but where you are in this competition. So you can see the user here, Rianne, has got a bit of playing up to do in terms of the fantasy theme. We go over to the MVP award. Again, we can see with 9 points, Rianne's not currently setting the world on fire, but this particular game's kind of keyed towards sales and service. So Rianne doesn't really factor into either of those areas of our business. And then we've got our KPI awards. So if I wanted to see who's resolved the most cases in the period, we can see that David, followed by Matt, followed by Coda. We can see our support team here all represented in terms of case closing. So it gives a good result. So you can get this sort of feedback as soon as you start the game up. CRM will be counting these activities as per the KPIs that you've got. So we can see the KPIs here. So cases resolved, 5 points for every case. Opportunities created, 5 points for every opportunity, etc., etc., etc. Okay. Right, so other bits that I want to look at, the profile. So we can see I can see now where I am standing in the standings, only in the fantasy standings, but also in the MVP standings. So I can see I'm this particular user's 15th out of 31 users that we've got for MVP, 16th out of 31 for the fantasy. They're second out of the 3 people in the left fielder position. So you can see all your different metrics from your user screen here. And I can also add time off for myself. So if I'm going away for a while and I don't want to sort of be penalized for that, I can say, okay, I'm going to be off in this particular period, and I'm going to be coming back in this particular period, and that gets set within gamification. So again, I can do that, and I'm not going to miss out on anything just because I'm on holiday. Okay, switching back to the administrator view for a moment. So the other aspect of this is the Stream TV element, which gives you the ability to basically have a large screen up in your place of business, whatever else, constantly showing these KPIs and statistics, so that people don't have to log into the portal. They can just look up. If you're in like a heavily managed call center or a busy service desk, you can have a screen up on the thing to show you all this happening in real time as you go. So that's called Stream TV, and you can access that from there. You set it up, you set up what it wants to be showing, and then you can see this then runs through on a position, the various KPIs that we're looking at, and where you are in the standings. So if you've got that sort of setup, it's a good thing to use. It comes included within the solution, and it's quite easy to set up, so it's certainly something to bear in mind there. Okay. Yeah, so we've looked at games. The other bits I wanted to just take a quick look at are the other sports that you could use for gamification. So we looked at football and we looked at cricket. So here we've got the football one. Again, 11 player slots. So if you've got a number of users that can easily fit within that, it's a good one to use. I'm just going to quickly scroll through the other ones that are available. So we've got your American football, rugby, again, high number of players, so good for a larger team. Cricket that we looked at, car racing, only 10 player slots there. Ice hockey, so there's baseball, there's a lot of different sports that you can run through, and if you've got a favoured sport internally, Grand Prix even, so that tiny little racing car. Track, so this is the smallest one, 8 player slots, so this is good for, if you've got basically 8 people in a team that you want to be tracking. Again, swimming there, I think that's the last one, it is. So that's just a quick run through of gamification. I hope you found it useful. If you've got any questions, feel free to chuck them in the questions bar at the bottom. Otherwise, thanks very much for your time.
Thanks, Daniel. That's great. So that concludes our presentation. I hope you found that a useful introduction into the gamification capabilities of Microsoft Dynamics 365. We'll stay online to pick up your questions, but if you want to find out more about deploying this feature, or if you've got any wider Microsoft Dynamics requirements, we'd be delighted to hear from you.